start in 1 minute, but you guys had your 10 cards, great. You didn't bring them, I'll tell you more. All right, guys, I believe it's 6 o'clock, so why don't we get started? All right, so let's summarize where we are, what we're doing today, and what our next class is for ourselves. So, by way of quick summary, you guys know authority, you know some of the fundamentals of tax policy, you understand, I hope, conceptually what is income, some exemptions from income, not all of them, because it's been a whole semester talking about exemptions. We talked about computing gains and losses, Code Section 1001, what is tax basis, and the application of things like Code Section 1011, 1012, 1014, 1015, 1019. Know what tax basis is. You know what amount realized is. You know what amount realized is good when you look at Crane and Tufts' decision. So it includes debt. We moved on and we talked about what are the consequences, what is the character of the gain, what are those consequences associated. So we have a preferential tax rate, we had limitation on tax losses, all those things associated with defining what is a capital asset, what is not. We looked at Code Sections 1239, 1245, 1250. And then we turned our attention to the issue of who is taxed, right? Who is taxed? And we bifurcated that chapter into looking at income from services versus income from property, right? And then we spent literally 3 classes, just because it's an issue that comes up a lot in practice, on issues of business deductibility. What's deductible? And we said that generally, from 30,000 feet up, that business deductions can be grouped into things like Code Section 162 expenses, ordinary and necessary business expenses, Code Section 263 expenses, those that have to be capitalized, Code Section 262 non-deductible personal expenses. All right? But then the authors, along with the code, delve deeper into issues of deductibility. And in digging deeper, we looked at Code Sections 162, A1, dealing with deductibility of salary, 162, A2, dealing with deductibility of travel expenses, and 162A3, dealing with the deductibility of lease and rental payments. We looked at those expenses, and then once we got done looking at those expenses, we looked at some ancillary issues like things like Code Section 274, right? And you always tie Code Section 162 and the limitations under Code Section 274. Because Code Section 274, despite things being ordinarily necessary, for example, business meals are subject to a 50% limitation under Code Section 274N. And then we looked at other expenses. The authors just took us down a path and looked at educational expenses, and those are enumerated in Regulation 162-5. Once we got done looking at some common business expenses, we spent the entire last class on the issue of depreciation. What I'd like to do is spend the next 10, 15, 20 minutes in just making sure everyone is comfortable with depreciation before we move on. So my agenda is to spend, like I said, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it takes, just reviewing the fundamentals of depreciation. And then we will move to Chapter 15, dealing with investment expenses. That's going to be the bulk of today, or tonight. And time permitting, at the very end of class, remember, we're going to turn to Chapter 19. Okay, Chapter 19. We were supposed to, your schedule permitted, read the first 10, 15 pages in Chapter 19 with the aspirations that next class, a week from today, is our 13th class, which means that our 14th class, which is our 42nd hour together, is December 3rd, which is our scheduled final exam. This is the 14th class. So that gives you a landscape, and hopefully by the time we're done with next class, consistent with the title of the course, Fundamentals of Income Tax, you guys should have the quote-unquote fundamentals under your belt.
Approximately when will our grades be available? Like last December?
Probably a week or week and a half after. Okay, time, except it might get thrown into any crisis mode. I will share a quick story. Everyone in this room, I suspect, has a story about Thursday and the storm. Many of you probably have stories. Frank's saying no story. You're at home.
You got 45 minutes to get home from here.
Only 45 minutes?
It's usual commute time. I
Right.
don't like group.
Well, I think some of you know I was moderating a tax panel in New Orleans on Thursday. And I had a flight scheduled in New Orleans, 6 in the morning on Friday, and arriving in Newark at 10 in the morning. And I thought, walking around in New Orleans and moderating my tax panel, I thought, gee, I really dodged a bullet. Because New Orleans was going to be sunny on Friday, and by the time I was coming back to Newark, 10 o'clock on Friday, it's going to be a sunny day in Newark, and the storm was going to be long gone. So most of the day I was smiling to myself on just how good I had it, right? Well, you can write the rest of the script, which is at 8:30, I get a text, 8:30 at night. Fill in the blank, my flight was canceled. And since most of the people had already been canceled, I was told by United the next available flight would be either on Sunday or Monday. I was not a happy camper. So what do? I got on the internet, did all the research. There was no flights going to Philadelphia, New York City, or Newark for the next 3 days. So I got the last available ticket to Chicago. From Chicago to Washington, D.C. From Washington, D.C., the last available Amtrak ticket Friday night. So started the day at 3 in the morning on Friday, ended it at 9 o'clock. So it's a lot of fun. I'm sure you guys have had those travel experiences. Anyone have a harrowing story on Thursday that their usual, unlike Frank, their usual half an hour commute became 8 hours? Go ahead.
Well, my professor canceled
Okay. That's not,
Outside is yours, but,
I don't know, that doesn't sound like much fun to be here for 9-10 hours. Anyone else got stuck or? All right. Anyway, let's talk about depreciation, all right? So, the operative code, PK, what's the operative code section here? Yeah, what code section? About depreciation. Vikram has his hand up.
Code section 168.
Code section 168, right, opens the door, right? And with respect to code section 168, there's several things you have to know, right, Kathy, to make depreciation happen. Just name one of the three things that you all need to know. Say it loudly, Kathy. The salvage value, that's code section 168B4. It's true, it's good to know the salvage value, but I'm talking more higher up. So that's one thing to know, but more generally, Kathy, what do you need to know? We know, thank you. It is a 1231 asset that's music to my ear. And Kathy, as you say 1231, what other two code sections crop into your brain?
1245 and 1250.
Beautiful, 1245 and 1250. But Kathy, I still wanted to get back to what are the three things, one of the three things you need to know for all depreciation. Spelled out in 168A to even give you a hint. Zara, since you and I apparently are drinking the same drink, the same Kool-Aid, so to speak, all right? We're all going on high octane, Mike. Notice, no bottled water up here, okay? Tax is not meant to be practiced with bottled water. Zara, let's see if we're drinking together. Well, I'll toast you if you get it right. Conventions, right? We need to know the convention. Cheers, all right? You need to know the convention. Everyone agree?
Yeah.
So, Amanda, can you tell us what's the most popularly used convention?
Straight line?
With that, Mike, would you agree or disagree? Mike, yeah.
I would say half-year convention.
And Kim, who would be right?
Whatever his name is, next name. I think it was.
Got to know your neighbor.
Just got it.
That's why I got these 10 cards
Mike-
here.
Mike F. Correct.
All right, Amanda, generally, it is going to be the half-year convention. Except David? Is it always the half-year convention? David R. No, and if not, when not?
I don't know. I wasn't here last night.
Or any other, Dan?
Real property?
Real property, what convention do you use?
Mid-month.
Mid-month convention, right? And well, you're not going to use the half-year convention or the mid-month convention. What convention are you going to use, Tupal? Mike, your hand was up?
The mid-quarter.
When do you use the mid-quarter?
You use the mid-quarter if 40% or more of the assets.
Not 40% or more.
40%. More than 40%, excuse me.
Thank you.
Are brought into service within that year in the last quarter of the year.
Okay, more than 40% of the assets are placed in service in the last quarter. An angel, pun intended. Be the angel here. Tell us the numerators, the four possible numerators if the mid-quarter convention applies.
1045, 745, 445, 445.
Yes. Everyone agree? We got four different numerators. Only one denominator, right, Jason? That denominator is? Not a trick question. 12. This last I checked, the year has 12 months, right? Everyone agree? So, what other convention is left, Ben? We got the mid-month, we got the half year, we got the mid-quarter. So, Ben, what convention is left? Keep going.
Full month convention?
1 month convention, right? And what kind of property do we use for that, Francis? Go ahead. Oh, okay. So, we got, what matter, well, Francis, I get to calling you since you're looking for your attention. Well, when do you use the full month convention? You sure? Go ahead.
Intangibles?
Intangibles, right? Everyone agree? Need the full month convention with respect to intangibles. Agreed? What is the question that many students, Elizabeth, not you, typically miss on exams and practitioners as well when it comes to the application of conventions? What will you not miss?
The convention.
You will not miss the convention, but what am I alluding to? Go ahead, Angel. Yeah, the convention you start with is the convention you end with, okay? Everyone agree?
Yep.
So that either when the final year or the year that it's no longer in service, use the same convention. Alright, so just make sure that you do that because like I said, you're highlighting it. That's good to know. Alright? So just make sure everyone gets that because like I said, I've been doing this long enough. I know what students typically miss and what they don't miss. And they miss that. And practitioners miss it. But you shouldn't, because I want you guys to make my holiday. So I want good exams. All right. So we have the convention. That's one out of the three things that we need under Code Section 168. We also need, Angie, we need the, what else do we need? We need two other things. Not sure? Jacqueline?
Recovery period?
We need to know the recovery period. Jacqueline, how do we know the recovery period? Nixie will tell you. Andrew.
I'm
Joe.
very close attention right now, so that
The method?
No, in terms of how do we know the recovery period? Sarah? I give it to you, but I give you the class life, right? By knowing the class life, you know the recovery period, right, Jonah? Right? I'll give you the class life, and by knowing the class life, you can figure out the recovery period, right? Joe, you were mentioning one other thing we need, right?
The depreciation method.
The depreciation method, and since you called it, Joe, what's the most common depreciation method?
Double decline.
All right, double declining, everyone agree? Double declining is the most common. Nick S., is that the one that we can always use?
No. You use 150 for lastly straight line.
Okay, 150 for 15 to 20-year property. When, John, do we use straight line? Name?
For real property.
Real property, right, John? We use straight line for real property. Agreed?
Agreed.
So it's mechanical. You have those three things, which are spelled out in Code Section 168, the applicable depreciation method, the recovery period, and the applicable convention. You are on your way to the promised land, right? And the code spells that out. Just for identification, real estate is typically appreciated, right? Alvin, over how long?
39 years?
Is that always true, Mike?
No, 27.5 years for real property that people live in.
Residential. All right, so Alvin, just make sure that there's two different recovery periods. One for residential real estate and another one for commercial, right? And then, on top of it, there's another depreciation method, which is known as what, Abbott, do you recall? There's another depreciation method.
Is it makers?
Makers is the generic one. What is the thing?
Is it the alternative depreciation method?
Under the alternate depreciation method, under what code section? 168G, right, Jacqueline? And what do you have to do if you're on the alternate method, Jacqueline? Dane, what do you do if you're on the alternate method?
Residential properties, 30 years, class light, and commercial properties, 4 years.
Okay, so you use what I'm trying to shed light on, is you use the class light, right? Use the class light, is, what method do you use with the alternate method? Straight line, right? All right, so these are the kind of fundamentals, guys, everyone in this room has to know. Notwithstanding, now let me just say something and then say in some respects that this is right now just a academic exercise. David, why would we call this an academic exercise right now? Temporarily. Michael, why would we call this an academic
With
exercise?
the current rules in place, you don't have to depreciate, you can expense everything, same as
What's your authority?
168E.
Not E. 168, okay, 168K. Okay, 168K, at least for now. You can expense everything but for real property, essentially. There are some other limitations too. But this is scheduled to go away in Code Section 168K. And I would argue that even in the short term, it's not going to be sustainable, that Congress is going to potentially have to revisit this sooner rather than later, because the revenue costs to the treasury are so enormous. But we'll see, we'll see. So Congress, for now, has instituted Code Section 168K, but bear in mind that you can see that things will change. We know when you take depreciation, the tax basis for the asset is downwardly adjusted, Code Section 1016. And we looked at two other aspects that I just want to make sure people understand. So we have Code Section 168, where Congress is very generous. We have what used to be, and again, I think it may, it's at least scheduled to regain importance, Code Section 179, bonus depreciation. Right now, it's kind of moot because you don't need a bonus. You get to expense the whole item, but Code Section 179, excuse me, allows you to take up to $1 million of expensing as long as you don't place into service more than $2.5 million worth of property. Having said that, again, at least for now, that is a it's on the back burner because everyone can just immediately expense. That's a pro-taxpayer provision. And then, Vikram, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say to clarify the Code Section 169.
168.
168.
And then, the bonus depreciation, Vikram, is Code Section 170. Okay. There are limitations. Those limitations are found in Code Section 280, capital letter F, with so-called listed property. Listed property, primarily for our purposes, automobiles, you cannot expense the entirety immediately, and there's a special schedule spell it out in code section 280, capital letter F, A. The authors beginning on page 428 describe special rules with respect to real estate, which we know has to be straight line, mid-month convention, and they point out some odds and ends which I told you not going to be held accountable for, but it's just interesting reading about the rehabilitation credit, low-income housing credit, whole bunch of, I'll call it, pro-real estate, shocker there, right? The real estate industry has some really nice benefits that aren't afforded to other taxpayers. And the authors go through several examples. Any questions on depreciation in general as you've gone through it?
Sorry,
Francis? Go ahead. Angie?
sorry, in this last class, are we going to do calculations for the depreciation?
We did the
Are
calculation.
you doing calculations?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll watch the video.
We had the video. I go to the video, yes. So just one quick calculation, then we'll move on to chapter 15, just to make sure everyone's with the program. So if you buy real estate, say for $35,000, not land, a building, for $35,000, and you buy it on Halloween, okay? You buy a building on Halloween, and then you have misgivings about the building February 1st, okay? Just tell me, how much depreciation do you take 2018, how much depreciation do you take 2019? That's a commercial building, okay? Commercial building, you buy it on Halloween, you sell it February 1st. Calculate the depreciation this year and next year. Take a minute, come up with some numbers.
Okay, 3,500.
35,000. So I'll go down one row in a minute and ask for 2018. I'll go down another row asking 2019. Take 30 more seconds. All right, for 2018, Andy, you have a number? Not yet? Simone?
1,794.
Give me a number?
1,794.
1,794?
88 cents.
Okay, John?
I have the same number.
Same number, Michael?
Yeah.
Francis? All right. Not sure, Trevor?
Still, with
Andrew? Same number, Andrew?
I'm trying to get.
You're trying to get to that. So John, tell us how you got the number.
35,000 over 39 years. 2 at 12.
Times what?
2 over 12.
2 over 12? Is that what you say, John?
Yeah.
Simone, would that be right or wrong? What was that? Corey? Corey, did you get the same?
No.
What did you say?
I didn't do 2 over 12.
What did you do, Simone?
Just did November
What do you mean?
I did $35,000
Right.
divided by 39
Right?
divided by 12 times 2.
Times 2? No, it's the same. Patrick, would that be right or wrong?
I put 2.5. You bought it on October 31st, wouldn't that be the mid-month?
Corey, Elizabeth, agree or disagree?
I thought we had to use the Misquoter Convention.
But for real estate, do you use the Misquoter Convention?
No.
You don't use
It's
the,
half month.
use the half-month convention, right? Sarah, what's wrong? Look,
I'm confused about the convention, so.
well, so what number, Patrick, would you multiply here?
2.5 over 12?
Simone, don't you agree that it's the mid-month convention, right?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, if it was more than that.
Say it loudly.
No, the October 31st date, I assumed that, we wouldn't, like, use a half month date.
Okay, but that's the nature of the mid-month convention, is some are gonna buy before, some are gonna do after. It's rough justice, we're gonna split that baby in half. So that if you bought it on October 1st, same 2.5. So, Patrick, what did you get?
I got $186.97.
186?
And 97 cents.
Anyone have a different number? Or is that the number? I didn't work it out before, so I gotta be trusting of my class. I hope that's not a flaw on my part. Guys, all you have to do is take the number, 39 years, right? 1 over 39 times the convention. I'm not gonna say a word. You sell it February 1st, the next year. Figure it out. What's the depreciation? Don't say it out loud. All right, so hopefully everyone's got that. Andrew, you got it?
Yeah,
To say it loudly?
no, I don't have it.
Nick?
Sorry.
Joe?
Almost no.
Vikram?
You use half year convention or?
What kind of property is this? Carla? Ronald? Amanda?
I got 112.1.
How much?
112.18 cents.
Mike, is that right?
And
Leo?
50 cents, yes.
Tim?
I didn't get that same number, but, I may have done a miscalculation.
Say it loudly.
I got a different number, but I'm pretty sure I probably miscalculated.
You missed it?
Probably, because I just took that 186 and knocked it off.
This is not double declining, so you don't reduce.
Oh, okay, so then I messed it up.
Nick, you got a number?
112.
112, PK?
112.
How'd you get it?
35,000 times 1 over 39 times 1.5 over 12.
Equals what?
112. Second.
And 70 cents?
Yeah, 112.7.
Right?
Yep.
So
I
Kim,
may have
how did you screw up?
forgot from the last class, but
18
then
cents.
what happened to,
All right.
did you start with you?
I didn't do the math. I'm assuming someone's pretty close here. Joe, what's the question mark?
In the first line, you used the mid-quarter convention.
No, we did not.
No?
Mid-month.
Mid-month?
The first one, by the way, Joe, you know that can't be the mid-quarter convention.
Because it's for intangibles.
What? This is for real estate.
I know,
Right.
but mid-quarter is for intangibles.
That is for tangibles. This is for real estate.
Right, so that's what I was wondering.
Right.
When did you buy it? I missed
So
that.
this, Halloween.
Oh,
All right?
Didn't you say, for a real property, it's always half year?
No, it's the exact opposite. It's never half-year convention. For real estate, it's always the mid-month convention. Always. You hear the word always? You hear any equivocation in my voice, Paul? None. All right, other questions? If you guys are feeling a little rusty on this, it's not a good sign, okay? It means you gotta practice some more. Go on the internet, there's plenty of practice problems available. All right? Brad?
What was the convention? I know the convention was mid-month, but what was the number? Was it 2.5, it was a 2.5 over 12 for the
Yes.
selling it?
Yeah.
No, for the selling it, it's 1.5 over 12. They sold it in February.
So it's the mid-month, yeah, okay, February, yeah. All right. Yep.
All right, you say it now, but on the exam, you gotta deliver.
So if you pushed it up a day to January 31st, it's still the same answer.
No.
You use one, you use 0.5.
Yeah, you use 0.5 over 12. Okay, it's the mid-month of whatever month you're selling it. Okay? If you sell it in January, it's 0.5 over 12. All right, other questions? All right, if you get stuck on this, even Thanksgiving, I'll be checking my emails, guys. I don't want anyone to have a rough Thanksgiving. You gotta make sure you're studying this stuff, right? Or at the dinner table, you can talk depreciation. I might permission, right? You really gotta nail this stuff. Comes up all the time in practice. Any other questions before we move to chapter 15? All right, chapter 15. I'm going to introduce some more code sections to your growing repertoire of code sections. We have an old Supreme Court case from 1941. Higgins v. Commission. The authors put it here for historic reasons. It's not one of those that you can easily name drop because Congress legislatively, right? Congress, when it's not a constitutional issue, and these are typically not, has the right to revisit this. And here we have a case of what in today's day and age we would call a day trader. Someone who spent a lot of time buying and selling stocks and spending a lot of money trying to secure the right investments. All right? So picture, if you will, typically, we've already gone through the cliche that when it comes to business expenses, if you spend money to make money with respect to business expenses, everyone's on the same page that that expenditure, you can get a tax deduction, right? If you spend money to make money, you should, under 162, get a business expense. But in yesteryear, if you spend money to make money on your investments, hey, last I checked, investments are not the same as business, right? When you're making your personal investment decisions, you're not in the business of doing that, right? So therefore, you couldn't rely, could you, on Code Section 162 for a deduction, right? Because the statute is crafted in a manner that its scope only extends to business expenses. So when Mr. Higgins endures these expenses relating to making money, but in the investment realm, not in the business realm, he seeks to take a deduction, but there is none afforded him. So where do these expenses get characterized, Mike? What kind of expenses are these deemed?
These are personal expenses.
Yeah, Code Section 262 expenses, right? Non-deductible personal expenses. All right, so Congress is not happy with that outcome. So Congress comes back and says, you know what? We're going to institute Code Section 212, which says, in the case of an individual, there shall be allowed as a deduction all the ordinary and necessary, sound familiar, guys? Ordinary and necessary expenses paid or incurred during the taxable year, and it lists 3 kinds of expenses. And just so you know, as the authors point out, on page 437 of the 19th edition, what Congress grants, it can also take away with an exclamation point. And ever since I've been teaching income tax, Code Section 212 expenses have been allowed as a miscellaneous itemized deduction. And they're scheduled to return as such in the year 2026, so you should know about them. At least for now, the deductibility of such expenses are suspended. Okay, under the Tax Act, under Code Section 67G, such expenses are currently not allowed. So let's just assume for the time being as we go through this chapter though, that at some point Congress intends to allow taxpayers to take investment expenses. So bearing that in mind, look at page 437. We have Bowers v. Lumpkin. An old case. And here we have a taxpayer who buys stock from a trust that was established for her benefit. So picture, if you will, a taxpayer purchases stock from a trust, and the Attorney General for the state of South Carolina for this challenges her. Says, you know what, we think you underpaid for this stock, and that it really shouldn't be yours. And she incurs lots of legal fees, fighting to maintain title to the stock she purchased. So picture, if you will, taxpayer spends a lot of money to ensure that she has proper title to this stock. I think she spent about $20,000. Approximately $20,000. And she would like to deduct the $20,000 as an investment expense. She would like to deduct the $20,000 as an investment expense. Jacqueline, do you recall what the court said here? I'm sorry? They allow a deduction here. No. And why not?
Because it's she's defending title.
She was defending title, right? So, just like, suppose if you were buying land, okay, picture you were buying land for $100,000, and in the generic case, you spent $5,000 of legal fees to secure the land, to purchase the land. Can you deduct the $5,000? And the answer is no. There's a regulation on point here. Look at regulation 212-1K. 212-1K. Expenses paid or incurred in defending or perfecting title to property and recovering property other than investment property, amounts of income which, if and when recovered, must be included in gross income, or developing or improving property, constitute a part of the cost of property, and are not deductible expenses. So essentially, the takeaway from this regulation and the Bowers case is just like sometimes Code Section 162 expenses last beyond the year, metaphorically, and they have to be capitalized under Code Section 263, right? Sometimes Code Section 162 expenses have to be capitalized under Code Section 263. Similarly, Code Section 212 expenses sometimes have to be capitalized under Code Section 263. So everyone's conceptually has seen this before in some form or fashion. So then we have next the Zaratsky case. So in Zaratsky, Matt G, do you have a chance to read this?
I did, let me review my notes. So taxpayer purchased 4,000 shares of stock in the company and was not happy with the way the company was being run, so they incurred costs to run the campaign to have a new board of directors elected.
All right, so the taxpayer is not happy with what he perceives the mismanagement of the company. He has spent a lot of money, right, making a significant purchase, and he's going to try to do what, Matt?
They want to deduct those costs and campaign for a new board as a business.
So he spends a lot of money because his aspirations are to change the board, and by changing the board, change the way the company is managed, dividend policy, the whole schmageddon, okay? So he spends money to improve the company. Is he ultimately successful in improving the company?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Matt?
Yes, he is.
Okay, I mean, he's not able to change the majority of the board, okay? But he is successful in getting certain members on the board, and as elaborated on page 442, because he's able to get certain members on, some of the management policies of the company change, and the company does become apparently more profitable. As a result of becoming more profitable, he's able to make more money, okay? So his expenditure proved to be productive. But was it held to be deductible at the lower court level, Matt?
At the lower court level, no.
No, it's not held. And why? At the lower court level, taxpayers denied a deduction. Do you recall what was the regulation that got in the way of it being deductible? Recall what was the regulation that stymied the deductibility here?
The 212
Okay, everyone, can you open up into your regulations? Regulation 212-1D. One D. Expenses to be deductible under code section 212 must be ordinary and necessary. Thus, such expenses must be reasonable amount, must bear a reasonable approximate relationship to the production or collection of taxable income or to the management, conservation, or maintenance of property held for the production of income. So it's got to have a proximate relation. Everyone agree? It's going to be some sort of approximate relation. And what the lower court found with respect to this taxpayer's expenditure, the operative word that the court used, the lower court, was that it was speculative. Everyone hear me? That the nature of this taxpayer was too speculative. Yes, he spent $17,000 or whatever dollar amounts he did, but he wasn't sure if this was truly going to improve the company. He was just keeping his fingers crossed that that kind of expenditure would lead to the company being more productive. And the lower court didn't see it being a proximate relationship ruling against the taxpayer. Matt? How does this court feel about that?
The higher court disagreed. They argued that the taxpayers spent this money in anticipation of making more money.
Yeah, that there was a proximate relation. This was not just like, let's go to Atlantic City tonight and speculate on red or black, right? That this was a thoughtful, strategic move on the part of the taxpayer. It was anything but speculative, right? And it points out all the successes. And as such, would constitute a code section 212 expense. So the taxpayer here,
The 212-1D is there to prevent, as if there was like gambling.
so again,
So 212-1D, they put it there.
212-1D, you're going to see it come up. Hold your question, Michael, for a moment. Because you'll see it in the context of the problems, then I think it makes much more sense. We have a revenue ruling 64-236 that follows the case. Where essentially the IRS, not the court, the IRS agrees that it's going to follow essentially the ruling in Zeratsky. That it will follow that relationship, that ruling. So in this revenue ruling, it says that proxy fight expenditures are deductible under Code Section 212. Proxy fight expenditures. Then we have the Fleischman case. Okay? Fleischman case. In this case, Elizabeth or Nate, do you guys have a chance to read this case? Is that it? Nate? No? Corey? Patrick?
Yeah, I think I skimmed through it. So this was about a debate between, like, in a divorce.
Okay, so we have Dr. Fleischman, who's married. Okay,
So he's trying to deduct the legal expenses.
fine, let's pause. Was this the happiest of marriages, Patrick?
I mean, I can't speculate, but I'm gonna assume no.
We both do.
Any indication of that, Dean?
I don't think it was a good marriage if they're getting divorced.
Oh, that's probably a good sign, true. Was it a long-term marriage, Dean? don't jump off the page at you, just to make it more interesting, right, Ben? How many years were they married, Ben?
Maybe 7, yeah.
About 7.
Okay, 6 years, right?
6.
6 years. What do they say? You take that, divide it by half. That's the number of good years. The other half is not so good. Who knows, right? And Trevor, was the doctor here very generous in his prenuptial agreement? Do you recall? No, you don't recall, or he wasn't there? What?
Well, did he say that we give her 5,000 for her to not take any property?
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna give her a whopping $5,000, right? In the prenuptial. And Andrew, prenuptial agreements hard or easy to overturn?
Hard.
Hard, right? They're not easy. And I've been involved in enough of these. When do you get prenuptial agreements overturned? Michael?
If you lie about how much income you have or your assets.
Yeah, you always want to make full disclosure, okay? One of the things to attach to any prenuptial agreement I've ever seen is that you have to attach an income statement and a net worth statement. And you want both of those to be, when I've advised clients, when in doubt, say more, not less. Because if you say more, no one can argue, gee, if I had only known, I would have asked for more. If you say too little, someone can always come back and say, had I known, I would have asked for more. So when in doubt, always err on the side of saying more. Right, that's one way to make sure each party has independent representation, because you can't have one attorney represent both. A lot of people say, well, we just want to pay one attorney, we don't want to pay 2 attorneys, but that doesn't work, so I'll hold it. And what else don't you want? You don't want it done under circumstances of undue duress. Anyone can think of some examples of undue duress? When a prenuptial agreement, you're gonna subject to being thrown out. And you can't make some of this stuff up, but parties have tried to sign prenuptial agreements during the cocktail hour before the wedding. Is that going to be subject to undue duress? Yeah, you can't do that. So, I mean, you can, but then you don't want to be the lawyer or accountant involved, because there's a good chance that could be easily overturned or disavowed, because you can't think straight, right? If you're about to walk down an aisle an hour later, you really don't have your senses about you, right? So anyway, the point is, prenuptial agreements, guys, not easy to overturn. Our client here, right, Patrick, spends a fair amount of money trying to stick it to his ex, right? So he spends and many of you, or some of you know, that to get divorced in 2018 dollars can easily, if it's a non-contested divorce, a few $1,000s will get you to where you want to get. But if it's a contested divorce, and there's a challenge on custody for children and all sorts of parade of horribles, it can easily cost $100,000 or $200,000 each. Okay? I mean, and what would the doctor like to do here, Patrick?
You want to deduct the costs in that on their prenuptial agreement?
All right, so he wants to deduct the legal expenses associated with upholding the prenuptial agreement, and he looks at the Internal Revenue Code, or his counsel does. He looks at Code Section 212, which we could look at together. Everyone wants to turn to Code Section 212. And he knows he can't rely on Code Section 212.1 for the production or collection of income. When, in the divorce context, when can a taxpayer seek to deduct expenses under Code Section 212.1? what kind of taxpayer can deduct expenses relating to the production or collection of income? Anyone want to say? Kim?
Person who's getting money, I would say.
Person getting money, which is otherwise known as alimony, right? Okay? Alimony is taxable, everyone agree?
Yes.
Code section 71. Code section 71. At least for now. Beginning next year, for years and years and years, under Code Section 215, taxpayers could deduct alimony payments, and the recipient included it. Just heads up, in the year 2017, the most recent tax act, beginning next year, 2019, alimony is no longer deductible, but its receipt will no longer be includable, okay? But they're trying to rate, most of the time, the higher the person with the greater income was taking deduction and the person with less income was including it in income. So Congress just reversed that. Everyone got that? And let's just take the generic scenario where men typically, I don't know percentage-wise, I'm gonna say 90% of the time it's alimony, 10% of the time it's palimony. But Congress, from a revenue perspective, stands to gain by reversing what was once the law. So just so you know, the whole realm has changed. So anyway, for our purposes, at least for today, Code Section 212, if you fight for alimony, that's fighting for income. Theoretically, under Code Section 212.1, it would be deductible. But our Dr. Fleischman here can't make that argument, right? He's not fighting for alimony. Could he fight under Code Section 212.3 for deduction under 212.3? That deduction deals with the, in connection with the determination, collection, or refund of any tax. Is this an expenditure he's making relating to a tax controversy? And the answer is no. Everyone agree? So where does that leave the good doctor? For his expense to be deductible, it has to be under 212.2, right? It has to be for the management, conservation, or maintenance of property held for the production of income. And Patrick, he looks at the court and Ernest says, look, let's just make up a number. I'm worth $10 million. I'm a great plastic surgeon. And if my wife were successful, my ex, I would have lost 5 out of the 10 million. So this is the quintessential, I'm fighting to preserve my property, right? That's at least his argument. Is that a persuasive argument to the court, Patrick?
No.
Why not?
Because, I know, I might be jumping ahead, but don't they bring in the origin of claim test?
That is what they do. There's a case called Gilmore, which the court relies on. It says, what was the origin of this controversy? What was the origin of this controversy? And the origin of this controversy as we know, was inherently personal, right? Is there anything more personal than a divorce, guys? Well, it's got to rank pretty up there, right, as personal. And that's what was driving this litigation, right? Not that he wanted to preserve his property. He wanted to terminate his relationship with his ex, right? that was really what was driving the expenditure. Sort of like when it comes to travel expenditures, you try to see what was the predominant reason for the travel expenditure. Was it business or personal? By the same token, was the expenditure here for investment reasons, to really conserve the property? It was personal because the two parties here disdained each other. And I think we can all agree it was the latter and not the former. So the court goes through that analysis and it cites other cases, and I think everyone here, we can comfortably end up with the proposition that these expenses are not deductible. Page 454, go through the problems here. Question 1. Speculator buys 100 shares of Sound Company stock for $3,000, paying her broker a commission of $50 on the purchase. 14 months later, she sells the stock for $4,000, paying a commission of $60 on the sale. Are the commission code section 212 expenses? So the commission's 212 expenses. So in this case, Brian, what do you think? Yes, no, maybe? Dan, see if you agree.
I would say yes.
You are. Dan, you agree or not?
I think the sales commissions could potentially be, I'm not sure about the purchase, I don't know if they would be, added to the cost basis.
So what do you say, David? What would you do with these expenditures?
Expensive.
Would you take a deduction in the year you acquired the stock? What would be your authority? 212. But is 212 limited by what code section? 263, right? So you have to capitalize these expenditures. So, right, you're acquiring title, so these commissions, we saw regulation 212-1K, I'll repeat, regulation 212-1K, that we have to capitalize these expenditures in the tax basis of the stock. All right, Dan.
Didn't the, I guess the case it cites here, the Sparkle case, the sales commissions could potentially be expensed if it was, you know, if they were ordinary necessary business
The
expenses?
sale commissions, right, once you're selling an item, and we're gonna see this in the problems that follow, there's nothing left to capitalize, right?
Right.
So I'm talking about the acquisition costs.
Right, they have both.
They have both.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at what happens here. Compute the gain or loss in problem A, guys. Compute the gain or loss, don't say it out loud, come up with a number. Gain or loss in problem A and how you got there. Everyone. What kind of asset is the sound company stock, guys?
Capital.
What's our authority for it being a capital asset? 1221, right? And then, do we have a capital gain here? Right, code section 1222, you remember? Has to be a sale or exchange of a capital asset held for more than 1 year. And here it's held for 14 months. So now we apply what code section when you hear the word sale? 1001. Don't say it bashfully. 1001. So compute the gain or loss here. Again, don't say it out loud. And we'll ask what number you got. Ken, do you have a number?
$890, long-term capital gain.
John, agree?
Yes.
David? You follow? Okay, you follow. Start with you. Let's get the number. Yep.
3,000 plus $50, that's
All right,
the
so
basis.
just tell me again, what's the basis?
$3,050.
Okay, 3,050 is the basis. And what's the amount realized?
4,000 minus 60.
So 3,960, right?
3,940.
2,000, I'm sorry. Say again?
Yeah.
4,000 minus 60 is 3,940.
So the amount realized is 3,960, right?
No.
40, oh, that's right, okay. And the basis is 3050, right? The gain here is 890, right, everyone agree? Suppose instead, she sells the shares for $2,500, paying $45 commission on the sale. Take 20 seconds, come up with a gain or loss. Andrew? Oh, yeah. Yep.
$595 loss, capital loss.
How did you get that?
3,000, well, it's a $500 loss plus the commissions.
Right. No. Just tell me, what's your gain, what's your amount realized here?
The amount realized,
Yeah.
500.
With your, Trevor, would you agree?
I'm just not explaining it well, but
So if I'm the client, you gotta explain it to me, right, Andrew?
yeah, absolutely.
So what's the amount realized, Andrew?
2,500.
Would you say that, Trevor?
40 minus the $45.
What do you say, Andrew, that your true amount realized would take that into account?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the amount realized?
First time. Sorry.
455, right? Okay. And what's your basis? 3050. Gain or loss of how much? $595, right? And as we all agree, what kind of loss is this? Say again, Jackie?
Long-term capital.
Long-term capital loss, right? Is it allowed? Right, for losses, they must be realized, recognized, and allowed, right? What's our door to get into the world of allowance? What code section? 165C, right? Section 165C. All right? Question C. Speculator owned 1/10 of 1% of Sound Company stock worth $3,000, but being an eager investor during the time she owned the stock, She incurred $500 of transportation, meals, and lodging expenses, traveling 1,000 miles to New York City to attend Sound's annual stockholder meeting. May she deduct her costs under code section 212.2. So, some ways this might be reminiscent of our Zaratsky case, some ways different, but Amanda, Mike, Leo, Kim, what do you say, deductible or not, Amanda?
Not deductible?
Not deductible. Mike,
Deductible.
Leo,
Yeah, I agree, it's not.
Kim,
I have none.
and no, Nick,
No, deductible.
EK,
Not deductible.
and Amanda, back to you. Why do you argue? You seem no hesitation. Why not deductible?
Because by her going to that meeting, it doesn't impact her continuing to hold that property.
Well, she may have a voice, she may say something, but and she will get to speak during the shareholders meeting, but why not allow her deduction? What concerns you? Why the quick no? Suppose she really earnestly went there because she's an eager investor. Mike, what's your hesitation?
She owns 0.1% of the company, so she has no real,
She really doesn't have a voice, right? And where might you invest, if this were allowed as a deduction, where might some of you invest?
Las Vegas.
Well, how about Disney? Where the annual shareholders meetings are held in Orlando, right? And you own one share of Disney, but you spent $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, right, to go to the shareholders meeting. And oh, by the way, while you're at the shareholders meeting, you know, you went on Magic Mountain and all the other rides there, right? Everyone agree? What's your real reason to going to Orlando? Is it to protect your investment in one share of Disney, or is it really to get onto Magic Mountain?
So is this just based on what kind of looks correct, as opposed to?
I mean, at some point it is, you know, regulation 212-1D. Is there an approximate relationship? Or is it purely speculative? Right? So if it weren't, and Zaratsky wasn't entirely off base, it just seemed there much more legitimate than in this context, right? And if we compare and contrast the next problem, our resultant C above if instead speculator owned 10% of the total outstanding sound company stock for $300,000. So in that case, does that, Andrew, change your thoughts here?
I mean, it's not deductible.
Say again?
It's not deductible.
You say it's not. Nick, say, what do you say?
I agree.
Joe?
I mean, you put it into context of how you said it, then it shouldn't be deductible.
Why not? Let's just use my words.
There's no waste there.
You can have a real say.
I'm sorry, I thought we were still on the one share.
No, 10%.
Okay.
So you're changing your own answers.
Well, yeah, I mean, 10% is significant, sure.
All right, so question D, I think most of you, by way of contrast and as the author structured these problems, question D has a much stronger aroma, right, of being deductible. Agreed? Question 2. After reading the Fleischman case that's dealing with the divorce, in what situations, and just to simplify things, let's just assume, it's much easier to follow, that the husband is the payor and the wife is the payee. Just easier, I think, if you conceptualize it as opposed to leaving it generic. Can the husband deduct attorney's fees in getting a divorce? Can the husband ever, he's paying, just make it up, $10,000 a month alimony. Can he ever get a deduction? Michael, you have your hand up?
I think we said if it's for alimony under 212.2, you could.
He could. Anyone agree or disagree? Francis, you agree? Trevor? What?
Yes.
Andrew?
I don't think so, no.
Why not?
I don't know, I'm good at follow-up, but I don't. Section 263, 262. I gotta look at that, sorry.
Trevor, you taking back your own answer?
Part of it, I agree that he can put under 215.
Okay, let's look at 215. Let's pause for a moment. The question is the fees, not the alimony. The question is the associated fees, okay, negotiating the alimony, not the alimony itself. Can he deduct the legal fees associated with, he and his wife battled it out, and the attorneys finally negotiated at $10,000 a month. But he paid $50,000 in legal fees. Can he deduct the $50,000 of legal fees? And if so, under what code section? Now, Michael, you said it was deductible. What's your authority? 212.2? 212? But 212.2 deals with the production of income. Here he's not producing any income, right, guys?
He's fighting to preserve his income.
No, he's not. He's fighting to preserve a smaller payment. And remember, it doesn't fall within the scope of conserving and preserving, right? Under Fleischman, that argument doesn't work, because what brings him to the attorney is because he detests and hates his wife. Yes, he wants to pay less, but what's the real reason, foremost, the highest reason? Because they hate each other. That's personal, 262. So you can't get a code section 212.2 expense here. You can't get a 212.1 expense here. The only thing you can hope for is that when the husband's attorney does pay the $50,000 of legal fees, that perhaps a portion of those fees, a portion relates to some tax advice, right? Some portion relates to tax advice. That's the only deduction it's gonna get here is the 212.3 expense. Someone had his hand up in the back? How about the payee expense? Can the wife deduct attorney's fees in getting a divorce? And the wife's attorney, the wife's legal fees, she spends $50,000. Can she deduct? Mike, you're nodding, yes?
Mhm.
Why?
212.1.
Why?
The production or collection of income.
Does that mean she gets to deduct all the fees? Well, let's face it, when she spends $50,000, a portion may be to fight for custody for her children, right? Everyone agree? Has nothing to do with the production of income. So you would need a bill broken down, and maybe 70% of her time is spent, the attorney's time is spent fighting for higher alimony, but some portion of the attorney's time is potentially, I don't know the fact pattern, fighting for custody, right? And that's not gonna be deductible, right? Fighting for custody is, what kind of expense, guys? Personal, 262 expense, right? Right?
So would it just be for alimony or also for like property settlement?
Property settlement is not taxable. It's not the production of income. The property settlement,
But they're fighting about how much of the property to get.
but remember, that is Fleischman. And that, you're never gonna win on the conservation or preservation of property.
So it's just about the future alimony payments.
Basically, that's the only portion that's gonna be deductible. Unless it's relating to tax advice, then that's gonna be a 212.3 expense.
But what what if it's income producing commercial property then?
But that doesn't matter, because they're fighting over the division of property. But foremost, okay, is they're fighting each other. And the division of property is really secondary, right? Because, Paul, taking that argument to the extreme, like in Fleischman, all legal expenses will be deductible in the divorce context because you're always fighting over property. The only expenses that wouldn't be deductible perhaps would relate to custody. And the reality is divorces are highly personal. That's really the driving mechanism behind the divorce, right? Okay? You guys ready? Let's just spend 5 minutes and then we'll take a break talking about the Foreman decision. Okay? And then we'll come back and we'll pick up where we left off. So Foreman. In this case, let me just ask, Alvin, you have a chance to read this? Angel? Frank?
Yep.
What's going on here?
So Foreman inherits a home from, I think it was his mother who passed away.
Yeah. Right?
In Staten Island, and
What code section applies if you hear someone's death?
1014.
1014, right? Okay.
so, basically takes some time, he redecorates it, and then he finally moves in. And he stays there for about 2 years. And then after 2 years, he decides he doesn't want to live there anymore. And so he tries to rent it, and then eventually ends up selling it. And I think there was the question is over depreciation on the property.
Well, there's several questions. Each paragraph, almost beginning on page 456, has a different element. So there's essentially 3 questions, Frank, not 1, not 2, but rather 3. And the first question is, can he take depreciation deductions, right? Question 1, addressed at the top of page 456. Can he?
Yes.
Yes. Why? What's the operative language that would permit him to take depreciation deductions?
So he's renting it, so it's held for, looks at it's held for production of income.
Right. I mean, he didn't actually rent it, if I understood it correctly. He made efforts to rent it, right? But that was enough. His attempts to rent it, the property is deemed held for the production of income, and depreciation deductions were allowed, okay? That was the first kind of expenditure. What's the next kind of expenditure, Frank?
The maintenance and conservation of the property.
Okay, so if he had like taking care of the lawn, paying utilities, all the kinds of maintenance and conservation expenses, would those expenses be deductible?
Yes.
Why?
Because again, it's still for production of income, so those are necessary expenses to generate income if you were to rent it.
Right. By the way, just keep in mind this case predates 1954, so that's why if you see references, it's not to Code Section 212, it's the predecessor to Code Section 212, so just don't get lost in the thickets at this stage of the semester. Everyone should know that. Finally, Frank, the third question is what?
He tried to, I think he sold it at a slight loss, so he tried to claim a long-term loss, long-term capital loss.
Right.
From the sale.
And was he allowed?
They said no because he inherited it, and so it wasn't a transaction that he entered into for profit.
Okay, so at no point did he enter into this transaction for profit. And as such, as we know, Jacqueline pointed out, Code Section 165C, for you to secure loss, you have to enter into a transaction for profit. Similarly, when you buy your car, and you subsequently sell it at a loss. When you buy your house, and you subsequently sell it at a loss. All these items that you buy, and you subsequently sell at a loss, the loss is going to be disallowed, right? In this case, it's no exception. Alright, so what I'm going to propose, guys, is that when you come back, we're going to look at this lorry case, we're going to finish the problems, and then we're going to spend some time looking at chapter 19 and the issue of timing. So why don't we take our 9-minute break, come back, and we'll persevere and finish up this chapter. Held for the production of income. Everybody agree? It's got to be held for the production of income. It's a sine qua non. And you need to hold this property for the production of income for all those kind of expenditures. And just, you know, whatever. He had the landscaper, picture if you will, his annual maintenance expenses. And this is, you know, Martha's Vineyard, like $20,000 a year maintenance. I'm just making a number up. The number itself is immaterial. Should he be able to deduct that expense? Now, bear in mind that this was not your ordinary, right, Michael, income-producing property, right?
Correct.
Because at no point did he rent it. And just in case, to get to Ben's point, if you want to know what kind of high couture kind of folks we're dealing with, some of you, maybe whoever read the case, on page 460, 7 or 8 lines down on page 460, it's pointed out as evidence of his intent to treat the vineyard property as a business asset. Plaintiff testified in the 1971 his daughter, after returning from abroad, requested the use of the property. Plaintiff refused, stating that the property was a business proposition. As a fatherly gesture, however, he rented a summer home in Maine for her use, okay? So I think we all get the flavor of the family and its assets, right? This is not Joe Sixpack, this is somewhat of an entirely different ilk. And originally, he decided to sell the property and dates are somewhat important here, right, Michael? In 1967, he decides to sell it, right? And what's his listing price, to recall? 150, right? And I found this factoid interesting, is that he's going to sell it or try to sell it in he's going to try to sell it in 1967 for 150. And he actually gets that price, but the board doesn't permit the sale, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few issues with people. There was one person that rejected because of that, and there was some other issues.
Whatever it is, he's not successful. And the question is, he never rents the property, right? Never rents the property. And he would like to deduct these maintenance fees. And the IRS would like a simple test. If you rent the property, you're producing income, you can deduct the maintenance fees, okay? So from the IRS perspective, it wants a black and white test, right? Easy to administer. And you guys have seen this before when we discussed the Duperstein case, right? If you recall the Duperstein case, the court there wanted that only in the business context you couldn't have a business gift. So here, once again, not surprisingly, government wants a straightforward test. The court, though, announces that on page 461 towards the bottom, we believe that a variety of factors must be weighed. And towards the very bottom of page 461, going on to 462, the critical inquiry the critical inquiry is therefore whether the taxpayer had or intended an expectation of profit. So, was there an expectation of profit? And on page 462, there's an elaboration. To aid in its inquiry, the court took into account the following considerations: length of time the taxpayer occupied his former residence prior to abandonment, the availability of the house to the taxpayer's personal use while it was unoccupied, the recreational character of the property, attempts to rent the property, and whether the offer to sell is an attempt to realize post-conversion appreciation. Okay? Notice that last phraseology, post-conversion appreciation. And if you read the indented language in italics, on the other hand, if a taxpayer believes that the value of property may appreciate and decides to hold it for some period in order to realize such anticipated appreciation, as well as an excess over his investment, it can be said that the property is being held, quote unquote, for the production of income. So if you decide, gee, I think I'm going to hold on to this property because let's suppose you bought property in Newark and you said, I'm not going to rent this property, but I think Amazon is going to come here. And I'm going to hold this property for 3 years because I know if Amazon comes, it's going to come right to this part of Newark because there's a Broad Street station and there's going to be a new economic hub. And I know the price is going to increase from $100,000 to $150,000. Could you deduct your maintenance expenses if you had a legitimate reason to hold on to property because of post-conversion appreciation? And the answer would be yes, right? You're holding on with the expectation of making more money. Now, is that true here, Michael? Do you have that same sentiment that this guy was holding on to the property for post-abandonment appreciation? What's your sense of the world?
No, I don't think that's the main reason why he was holding on.
Why do you think he was holding on to it? Just read this paragraph, we should all together. On page 463, 3 paragraphs down. The fact that the plaintiff immediately listed the property does not negate his contention that he intended to capitalize on post-abandonment appreciation in land values. By an immediate listing, plaintiff made the property a visible commodity on a demanding market. He patiently waited until the economic forces pushed the market value of his property up to his list price. I think we could all be a bit cynical in this room. At least I can be, perhaps you can, and say, I don't understand how the case came out in the taxpayer's favor. The only thing I can say, again, cynically, is perhaps this judge and our taxpayer used to hobnob together and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard or wherever, because this just reeks of where this person got the deduction, and I'm not sure, because did they use the property during the years in question? Theoretically, no, okay? But if you read the case, this taxpayer at least used the Martha's Vineyard twice during the season, right? They went up to open the house, and they went back to close the house.
And also for meetings.
What?
He also went there for the annual meeting.
Annual meeting. The point is, this person, like many, I would imagine this person had many houses. He probably didn't use it more even when he wasn't, quote unquote, looking for post-conversion appreciation. So you're making good use of the house, And cynically, I'll say perhaps deducting their personal expenses and upkeeping the house. But taxpayer does prevail, and doesn't matter what I say. Just when you read this case, Ben, maybe you'll see it with a cynical eye too, but you have to be the judge. Anyone else see this case differently? See that maybe you see it less cynically than I did, Nick?
I just thought the point about, how we, I guess, he unfurnished the whole house.
Okay, tell me more. What is your point about that?
They said that because he unfurnished the whole house, it would be easier to sell. So I mean, if he was really using it, there was nothing in the house.
I mean, I don't know. You know, again, remember, it's day and age. It's not like Google Maps. We know for a fact he really could have furnished the house. And didn't he stay there for a few days before and after to open and close? And Michael's reminding me even to attend the annual meetings. So there had to be something like a bed for him to go to. Because I'm sure his neighbors weren't saying, oh, don't worry, you could just hang out at our place. I think it that sense. So, again, maybe it's my cynicism. You guys be the judge. Right.
So extending that cynicism, would this still apply to real world? Like, if, like, people speculated during the real estate crash and they invested in people's properties who were foreclosed on, and they're holding it now, they can still point to this case and say, I just bought a bunch of homes, like, fire sale. They're going
Yeah,
to
I mean,
go
that I see is more legitimate than someone who has a vacation residence they use, I'm making this up, 4 times a year, and now they're only using it 3 times a year because they decided to hold onto it for post-conversion appreciation. So Frank, you buy 10 different pieces of property and you're holding on to them, and you have to, you know, maintain the lawn and whatnot. That seems to me legit.
I guess what confuses me about it, because it's like 6 years, and there's no rental. Whereas, I guess I'm taking my example to the street, keeping it empty, knowing that the market will come back, but probably not an apples to apples.
Yeah, but if you buy speculative homes in Irvington, you know, you're not buying, it's a whole different flavor than having a place up in Martha's Vineyard.
Sure.
And you were gonna say?
I was gonna say, it's like if you're really rich and you decide just to put your house out on the market, a rental property on like Craigslist and never respond to any of the, you know, emails, you just can document, hey, I put it out there for rent.
Right.
But now
I
I'm just
made it
never
more
gonna-
visible,
Right.
to use the judge's term.
Document it, and now I can cut my lawn and write it off as an expense.
Exactly.
Yeah, but also I think it was hard for him to, wasn't there some kind of rules about who they can rent to and for how long, and it wasn't simple.
I'm not denying it, but I'm troubled by the outcome of the case. All right?
Aggressive.
All right. Let's look on page 464. Okay. Section 464. I mean, page 464. Recall the Frank case in chapter 14 at page 334. If you recall that case, that's where the taxpayer, he and his wife, went looking for a new trade or business, if you recall. And the question was at the time, was the taxpayer carrying on a trade or business? Do you remember that? And the taxpayer, the court held, right? The taxpayer was not carrying on a trade or business, not deductible. And that was one of the impetuses, right, behind the passage of Code Section 195. You guys only got an excerpt of the case. The authors did not give you the entirety of the case. The case itself not only deals with Code Section 162, also deals with Code Section 212 expenses, because the taxpayer said, look, maybe it's not a trade or business, but I'm incurring this expense as an investment, right? I'm trying to invest my funds, and as such, can I get a Code Section 212 expense, right? I'm spending money to make money on this new investment I'm making. What did the court hold? Michael, you had your hand up?
Oh, I was looking at this, and I remember that case, and I thought the point was it was not a trade or business. So I said, well, if it wasn't a trade or business, and you got the deduction, it probably might have been under 212.
I'm sorry? You're saying it might have been in Code Section
165, I thought it had to be a trade or business, but 212 doesn't have to actually.
It does not have to be a trade or business, it can be investment, but was the taxpayer allowed this expense under code section 212? The court holds no, because the time the money was being expended, right, it was still a search, it was still a preliminary search, it was not producing income. If you look at code section 212, right, you're allowed a deduction under 212.2 for property held for the production of income. Well, there's no production of income, so the court denied the code section 212 expense. And because the taxpayer had not entered into the transaction for profit, no deduction was allowed under 165C2.
So it's no deduction.
No deduction. Okay, if Frank had decided to buy a newspaper and incurred capital expenditures to begin operations, but then abandoned his plans, would he have been allowed a deduction? Angie, you're shaking your head, yes?
Yeah, I'm thinking, since the expenses were occurred during the operations and whenever he was producing income, then probably it should be deductible, even though he abandoned it. So the time of the expense was occurred during the time he was producing income, even though he abandoned.
Once it began operations, right, guys? By that point, once you begin operations, you have entered into a transaction for profit. At that point, code section 165C2, right, Jacqueline? You had mentioned it before, 165. 165 would permit a deduction, right? Because we've crossed that threshold, Joe?
So that's because at the time, he had intent to make profit, right?
Not intent. He was. It actually entered into it. Because remember, when he's searching, he has an intent too. But you gotta have more than just intent. You gotta enter into the transaction.
So if he didn't enter into the transaction and he had intent, he couldn't deduct anything?
No. Intent alone doesn't get you there. Question 1C. If Frank entered into the business and elected 195, but ceased operations before deducting all of his startup expenditures, to what extent could it take a 165C loss? What does code section 195 say, guys? Do you remember? You get an expense under 195? What does 195 say? Yes, no, maybe? Doesn't 195B2? That if you elect under 195 and you subsequently things go bust, you get a deduction under 195B2, right? Everyone agree? B2. So question B and C are the same. In question B, there was no election made, but you still get a deduction. 195, question 1C, you get a deduction under 195B2. Question 2, see how good you guys are. Homeowners purchase their vacation residence for $180,000, $20,000 available to the land. When it was worth $160,000, still $20,000 allocable to the land. Excuse me, the taxpayers moved out and put it up for sale, but not rent for $170,000. Everyone understand that the property declined by $20,000 overall in value? Now they're gonna try to sell it for $170,000. And they take deductions for expenses and depreciation on the residence. Right? If so, what type of expenses would qualify? So, any instincts on this one? Dane, any instincts?
I do not think they can take the deduction
For what?
for the expenses.
And Smo, you agree or disagree?
I think they can because it's a vacation home.
And just justify it.
Well, so I'm just thinking if it was a vacation home and they were using it, they're gonna rent it, then
Great, say again, what's that last one?
my mind frame, I'm just thinking like if it was a vacation home and they were using it, when they were not staying there, like for the production of income, then I would say that they can deduct the expenses.
But they're not renting. So does that change your answer or keep it the same?
Then they can't deduct it.
And just be careful your pronoun or the word it. Deduct what?
They can't deduct the loss on the sale of the home.
Okay, that's one question, code section 165. What about maintenance expenses? So,
I don't think so. Well, it
okay,
wasn't.
we have maintenance and we have depreciation, we have the loss. Everyone, we're gonna take, of the three, we're gonna take the loss off the table, right? Everyone agree? Never a transaction entered into for profit. What about the depreciation and maintenance expenses?
Maintenance expense, I don't think you can take because it wasn't for production of income.
So plain like, and Dane, are you gonna argue that it should be deductible?
No, I agree with her, I don't think it's deductible.
Dan?
I think you can make the argument in both the Horman case and the Lowry case that you could.
Why?
Well, the Lowry case, he was able to take the deductions in a similar situation with the vacation home. And then the Horman case, I know it was a home that was gifted to him, but he had the same situation where he moved out, listed it for sale, and was able to take those depreciation.
But he also tried to rent it in Horn, right? And Lowry, he didn't try to rent it, Michael?
I'd say the difference here was, they're not looking to make, they're not holding it for appreciation purposes, they're not renting it.
Well, so that's critical because in the Lowry case, right? And Dan's point is, okay, look, the Hartman case we may not prevail, right? Because in that case, it seems to suggest that renting this property would be, in the absence of trying to rent the property, probably a non-starter. But our friends in the Lowry case, right, were looking for post-conversion appreciation, right? Like they're holding the property for trying to get a good sales price, remember? And the question is, if you buy property for 180, it's worth 160, could you argue when you sell it for 170, somewhere in between, that you're really looking for post-conversion appreciation? Then that's a much harder argument to make, right? If they said, gee, we're gonna sell this property and I'm holding on to it until I think the sales price is gonna go up to 250, right? Because Amazon's coming. Maybe you can make the argument in that case, I'm holding on to the property and I'm gonna make a lot of money, the depreciation, maintenance expenses should be deductible. here it's a much harder case to make, right? So this is, you know, sometimes clients call you up in advance, right, before they make a move, and you say, I want to report it as deductible. Sometimes they're under audit, right? And the water has gone under that bridge, and what you're left to do is negotiate with the IRS, and the best you can offer your client is say, look, we got a loser here, but I'll try to abate the penalties. And I'll use the Lauren case to try to, you know, sometimes your client's dealing a few aces, sometimes a lot of jokers. And, you know, you have to make the decision what hand you've been dealt.
Little things to, you know, like what you said, it all depends. Because if you live in a neighborhood where the market just drastically drops, or you own a piece of property there and it just drops so drastically, and then it does go up, even if it goes up a little bit less than what you paid, to me, I think you can make an argument, perhaps.
Yeah, but is it a winning argument? And for exam purposes, if you don't mind me saying.
Oh, yeah, for the exam, yeah.
I mean, you know, what's the better answer? Nick, you were gonna say?
Nah, just, I mean, if we're going by exam purposes.
I'm sorry?
If we're going for exam purposes, it doesn't hold water.
Probably doesn't hold water. Don't push it. I mean, sometimes you're desperate, and desperation causes you to make an argument.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking for exam purposes to make a desperate argument. That's not a good thing. Because by that token, virtually anything you argue could theoretically be a right answer, because we're all desperate at some point. All right. Let's see. Question B. Let's see if we can get some numbers here. And let's think about tax policy as you're trying to respond to these. Insured said that the taxpayers rented the property and properly took $10,000 in depreciation deductions on it. What result when they subsequently sell the property for $145? Now, bear in mind, when you hear the word sale, what code section comes to mind?
1001.
1001. I should hear a chorus. Right, code section 1001, right? And what that means is we need to know the amount realized, and we need the adjusted basis. Everyone agree? So don't say it out loud. Take a minute. Everyone come up with the amount realized and adjusted basis, and tell me, don't say it out loud, what the gain or loss is here. Take one more minute. EK, you got a number?
Yes.
What?
Number 25,000 to move.
25. Kim?
Oh, which one? The first one?
Yeah.
145?
Yep.
35,000.
35. Leo?
Yeah, I had 30,000.
Mike?
25,000.
Amanda?
25,000.
Okay. David? Have a number? Any number? Gain or loss, David?
Say David R.
David R, yeah. 25, Dan? Brian? Jacqueline? 35? 35? Abbott?
25.
Mike?
Wouldn't 1250 be factored in here?
Depends if there's gain or loss. Is there gain or loss here? Because you don't know, you don't remember who taught you tax if you're talking about a 1250 loss. Okay? There's no such thing, right?
No, but it's 25.
But guys, can I just ask you a question? The authors, one of the reasons this is the best-selling graduate tax book, I pointed out to you, is the authors don't have you reading everything, which is good. It's a good tool. So on page 455, you see the three regulatory sites the authors give you? Everyone see that? That means you don't have to scurry around and read all the regulations, right? That would be painful, right? Under 165, 167, or 212. Agreed? Very nice of the authors. Agreed? Yeah. I will ask rhetorically, no one has to answer. Did everyone read those three regulations? Without answering me. Because what you're going to find is, it's impossible, and if you don't mind me saying, not a single one of you got this question right, because you probably didn't look at the regulations. So let's look together. Never hurts at this point to look. And think about this. When you're taking depreciation deductions, what number would you take a depreciation deduction under? It's vacation house you're putting up for rent. Would you deduct it, would the depreciation deduction be on 160 or on 140? In other words, when you convert this property to business use, right, rental property, are you going to take depreciation deductions based on, remember, it was acquired for 180, but 20,000 was allocable to the land. When it was converted, it was worth 160, 20 of which was allocable to the land. What number would be your starting metric? Your starting point for taking depreciation deductions, guys? Say it loudly. Wouldn't it be 140? Isn't it? When you put the depreciable property into service? Look at regulation 167G-1. 167. Basis for depreciation. The basis upon which the allowance for depreciation is to be computed with respect to any property shall be the adjusted basis defined in Code Section 1011 for the purpose of determining gain from the sale or other disposition of such property. In the case of property which is not, emphasis on the word not, being used in a trade or business or held for the production of income, which is hereafter converted for such use, the fair market value on the date of such conversion, if less than the adjusted basis at that time, is the basis for computing depreciation, which makes sense, right? Otherwise, the taxpayer could deduct what would end up being the personal use of their house, a vacation house, where they're living the vida loca, right? You don't want to allow taxpayers depreciation deduction. Suppose they live there 20 years, and the property declined in value from 180 to 160, right? 20,000 of which was allocable to the land. Where do you want to give the taxpayer depreciation deduction? Well, they put the property in service when the depreciable property is worth 140, right? Everyone agree? Anyone not see that? And that makes sense, right? If you bought a car for 50,000 and after using it for a few years you convert it to business use, you don't want to start allowing the taxpayer to take depreciation deductions on 50,000, but it's fair market value at the time it's converted because that reflects the business asset at that time. If the car went from 50,000, say to 20,000, that would become the new, you're putting in $20,000 worth of value into service. So here, we start off with the depreciable part, 140, right? Less 10,000 in depreciation is 130, plus the value of the land, its basis is going to be 150. So I know, and the key point here is that the depreciation deduction is 10,000. Okay? Everyone get that? That the depreciation deduction here is 10,000 based on this 140, right? Now, why am I using, I knew that the depreciation was 10,000. I could have used, right, the starting point could have been, I took 180,000 less 10,000, and I could use the basis being 170, but, or in this case, I took
160.
well, it depends if I'm including the value, well, right, 160 less 10, and the adjusted basis being 150. Why did I choose this? Well, I'll tell you why. Let's all look together at regulation, okay? Regulation 165-9B2, okay, everyone? That was the second regulation, 165-9B2. Property converted from personal use, 165-9B2. The loss allowed under this paragraph upon the sale of property shall be the excess of adjusted basis prescribed in 1011 for determining loss over the amount realized from the sale. For this purpose, the adjusted basis for determining loss shall be the lesser of either of the following amounts adjusted for code section 1011 for the period subsequent to the conversion of the property to income producing purposes. So it's the lesser of the fair market value of the property at the time of the conversion, or its adjusted basis for loss at the time of the conversion. So it's the lesser of the two numbers. What's the lesser of the two numbers? Is it 180 or 160? 160, right? So the adjusted basis is 150. So when we sell it for 145, is there a gain or loss, guys? Loss of how much? 5,000. Loss of 5,000. Okay? I'll put you on the spot. Francis, what's the character of the loss? Trevor, see if you agree. Just tell me the character of the loss. Francis. Okay, but, so? Trevor? Agree or disagree? Okay, if the losses exceed the gains, you don't have to say long term, right, Francis? It's just an ordinary loss, right? I wasn't sure where you're going with that, but ordinary loss. Agreed? Everyone's good with that, right? Everyone's on a high now, because now you know what you're doing and you know there's these two regulations and they make sense, right? Yeah? I hope they do. Suppose instead you sell it for 175, okay? Don't say it out loud, come up with a number, gain or loss. How much and its character. Throw out a number. How much?
25,000.
Andrew? Joe? Zara? Kathy? You're nodding, but that's not a number. You have a number, Kathy? Vikram?
Yeah, I agree.
Nick? Matt?
I agree.
Dan?
I think it's 5,000, 1250 ordinary.
Ryan?
I agree.
With whom? All right, the lower tier is gonna get it this time, guys. Why? Dan, why did you come up with that?
Because it's not a loss.
We're not selling at a loss, right? Everyone agree? So the regulations under 165 have no application here, right? The regulations here have no, the loss regulation, we still know that depreciation is 10,000. Why? We have a regulation 167 that applies to gain, it just tells us how to compute depreciation. So we know that depreciation is definitely $10,000, right? The only question is there going to be a gain or loss? Now when we sell it, in this case, for what are we selling it for, 175? We know there's going to be a gain. There's no loss here. No how, no way is there a loss, right? If you're selling it for 175. So in that case, we just take the 180 less the $10,000, that's depreciation, right? Our basis here is 170. We sell it for 175, gain of 5. And Francis, you would agree, it's 1250 ordinary, let me correct myself. 1250 unrecaptured gain, taxable at 25%. The tax rate is 25%, right? Everyone should get that. Now, of course, you know what the authors are going to do in the next problem, right? They're going to say, what if you sell it for 165 just to play games with you? So I asked David, Tufel, and then ended with Michael. David, what do you say?
Is there no gain or loss?
No gain or loss, Tufel?
I did keep up with it.
Not sure?
Could you please just go back to the last meeting?
1 second, I will in a second. Let's just get this for Michael.
Me?
Yes? What do you say?
No gain or loss.
Okay, so, and what's your authority? For David, what's your authority? What?
I'm not sure.
Ron, any authority? This is, remind you of a problem we did a few months ago, guys? In the context of gifts. And we looked at regulation 1015-182. Regulation 1015-182. Where in that context, where there's no gain, there's a basis for computing gain, and there's no gain. There's a basis for computing loss, there's no loss. And the regulation says there's no gain, no loss, right? So is there any authority directly on point? Nah, but that's pretty, excuse my language, pretty damn close, right? So, in this case, your answer would be no gain, no loss. Now, Tufal, you had a question, or Matt, someone had a question?
I had about question number 2.
Right.
You said that it was $5,000.
1250 unrecaptured gain.
But why are you, so your basis is 170 this time?
Yeah. Because there's no loss, so we use just a normal basis. What was that, Nick?
What section is it?
Just code section 1016. The original basis was 180, right? We took $10,000 of depreciation, reduces the basis to 170, period, game over. Only for purposes of computing loss, we have to use the lesser of it, right?
So that's not the
65-9, no, because there's no loss here. That regulation has no application here.
Only losses.
Only losses. We don't have a loss here. Right? Simone, you got this?
No, I couldn't hear, sorry.
You're not, what's the issue?
No, I couldn't hear you.
I'm just saying there's no loss here, so we didn't use the lesser. We did not apply regulation 165-9B2. Okay?
For number 3, what's your basic variance? It's gonna be our loss.
I mean, there's two different bases here. One for, just look at regulation 1015-182. There's two different bases here, and therefore there's no gain, no loss. Okay?
So if you really wanted to make it complicated, question two, you could have said that the land was $20,000 from 180, so depreciation would not apply to that.
What would not apply?
The $5,000.
I don't know what you mean by that.
The bottom line 5,000K of ordinary gain would not.
It's
be-
not ordinary gain, it's 1250 unrecaptured gain. Right? Be careful, because there's a special tax rate that applies. Ready to move on, guys? Question 3? Question 3, or question C, I should say, I apologize. Question C says, what results in B2 above? If the property had been homeowner's principal residence, he occupied it, and they had occupied it and used it for 4 out of the 5 prior years. Okay? So, suppose they had occupied it, and what the authors are going to point out to you, and we'll see in a moment, code section, normally, many of you are familiar with this, that there's a code section 121. Code section 121, and its placement is important because you guys know, right? When we dealt with income which is exempt from tax, right? Beginning at code section 101, life insurance proceeds. 102, gifts and bequests. 103, interest on municipal bonds. 104, 105, 106 dealing with healthcare benefits. 107 deals with members of the clergy. 108 deals with tax exempt cancellation of indebtedness income. 109 basis for when a lessor, someone makes an improvement. All those are exemptions, right? And 119 deals in lodging. What is code section 121? Well, it's another exemption. And if someone sells their principal residence, they get to, if they're married, an exclusion of $500,000. If they're single, $250,000. Why did Congress put this in the code? Why did Congress put it in the code? Now, your cynical self can look in the mirror and say, why did Congress put it in the code? Because, well, this is a gift to the wealthy, right? Because wealthy people generally own homes and they can sell them at gains and they don't have to report the income, okay? So that's your cynical self. How about your less cynical self? Why did Congress put this in from a public policy perspective? Code section 121. Ben?
It's like the easiest way for accretion of wealth for everybody, more or less.
Well, but it still inures predominantly to the wealthy, right? Joe Sixpack doesn't own a house, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, or he's more likely to own a house than maybe like stocks or.
True, but even then, he or she is not gonna get a lot of appreciation on it.
Right.
Frank?
Say they could probably turn around and take those profits, put it into another principal residence?
No, code section 1034 has been repealed. You used to be able to roll it over tax-free, but that code section's been gone for like 20 years. But Congress probably instituted this. Why? Because 95% of taxpayers have no clue what their tax basis is, right? Is that a fair statement? From an administrative perspective, ask taxpayers, okay, oh, you bought your house when? How much did you pay for it? Maybe they'll know, maybe they won't. But then they will have made some improvements which will increase basis. And some things, like when you remodel your kitchen, okay, you're supposed to back out the prior cost, right, of what you originally sunk in the house. And most taxpayers really don't keep very good records, okay? So this was a concession on the, in my opinion, if you're not that cynical, concession that most people don't know what their tax basis is, right? putting that issue aside from a policy perspective, if you take depreciation deductions, you get the full use of this code section 121 exemption, and not surprisingly, no. Why? Congress said, gee, you took depreciation deductions. If your sales price recaptures your depreciation deductions, hey, you gotta take that into income. What's my authority? Look at code section 121D6. Code section 121D6 is a recapture provision. It essentially says, hey, you take depreciation deductions, and then you subsequently sell the property, you have to take that into income. Anyone falling off your chair when I tell you that? I don't think so. All right, so look at number 3. Let's look at number 3 together. Single purchases a principal residence after 2008 for a cost of $200,000. Prior to occupying the residence, single rents out the residence for 1 year, taking $10,000 of depreciation deductions on it. Single then rents it out as a principal, single then occupies it, as a principal residence after owning it for 5 years total, sells it for $400,000. So year 1 rented it, okay? And for the next 4 years occupies it as a principal residence. Compute the gain or loss, guys. So everyone take a moment and come up with some numbers. You hear the word sale? What code section? I should hear a car, supplies? 1001, beautiful. What kind of asset is a residence? What? It's a capital asset, right? Unless they use it in a trade or business, right? So the first year she rents it, it's a 1231, but after that, it's a capital asset. Right, so compute gain, loss, income, what would have to be reported here? Everyone take a minute, come up with some numbers. Okay. Any gain or loss here?
I wanna say it's just a $200,000 long-term capital gain.
Okay. Elizabeth?
10,000 recap and 200,000 exempt.
Okay. Nate?
210, gain, and the 11%.
210 gain, I'm sorry, say again? What was the
Long
tax?
term,
210. Alvin? Have a number, Alvin?
No.
Matt?
I agree with the 10K recaptured and the balance is excluded.
Frank?
Same.
Michael? I'm still looking for the right answer, so. Anyone have a different answer? Tuval?
No consequence?
No gain or loss?
No.
Michael?
I think what happens is, because she rented the first year, is that a non-qualified use, so she doesn't get the full.
It is a non-qualified use. So the gain here, our amount realized is 400, right? Everyone agree? And the tax basis, right, she took $10,000 of depreciation deductions, agreed? So, what's her basis? 190, right? Everyone agree the gain here is 210. And this taxpayer, everyone agree, is a single taxpayer, right? So normally the exclusion is 250, right? But we know under code section 121D6, the first $10,000 is 1250 recapture, right? 1250 unrecaptured, I should say. Everyone agree? And we take that off the top. Why? Because if you look at code section 121B5D, code section 121B5 capital letter D, it says subsection A shall be applied after the application of D6. We have to first recapture, and then we have $200,000 of gain. And remember, we rented it out the first year, and if you look at D5, excuse me, code section 121B5, not D5, B5, it says exclusion of gain allocated to non-qualified use. It says subsection A, that's the exclusion, shall not apply to so much of the gain when the sale or exchange of property is allocable to periods of non-qualified use. What was our non-qualified use? It's the first year out of 5 years. So 1/5 times 200, that's the remaining gain, equals $40,000, okay? $40,000, which would not be excluded, right? 40,000 is recognized gain because that's non-qualified use. And how much does that leave? That leaves 160 excluded under 121A. So you would have to recognize 10,000 of 1250 unrecaptured gain and 40,000 of capital gain. Why? Because if you look at code section 121B5, there's a period of non-qualified use, right? 1/5 of the time period. The numerator is 1 year, the denominator is the 5 years in total. Everyone's good with that, right?
So 40 is taxable, right?
50 is taxable. 10,000 of 1250 unrecaptured gain and 40,000 capital gain.
Is that 40,000, 1231?
That 40,000 is not 1231 because it's not properly used in a trade or business because during the 4 years in question, it was a capital asset, right?
But the first year, which is what we're accounting for, technically was 1231 at that point, correct?
Yeah, but I think the 40,000 is capital gain. All right. Question 2, what happens if we sold it for 600,000? Let's see what numbers you guys come up with. halfway down the line. Trevor, got a number?
410.
How much?
410.
What's the character?
So I think you would follow the same Sue's A, and, but there'd be more capital gain because it's over the 250, 121 limit.
Well, you gotta answer that. Francis? Michael?
I said 10,000 recapture and $150,000 cap gain,
How much?
150.
John? John, you have a number? Simone?
I agree because the inclusion, I think it's up to 250.
So what would you say it is, Simone?
So I have the $410,000.
And 600 is the amount realized, right? The basis is 190.
Right.
The gain is 410, right?
So the 10,000 recapture.
And everyone agrees, we're gonna pull out the 10,000 unrecaptured 1250 gain, okay? Keep going.
$80,000. That is the
1/5 times 400 equals 80, okay? Keep going.
And then, the exclusion is up to 250, so the 70,000 added to the capital gain.
So we can only exclude the remaining gain, right? How much is the remaining gain? 320. So we take 320 minus 250, so the remaining gain is 70, right? So we would recognize 10, 80, and 70. In problem A, suppose single initially occupied the residence for 4 years, then rented it out the 5th year. Is there any period of non-qualified use? No, right? So in that case, what would be recognized, what one in this first problem? Just the 10,000 would be recognized, okay? So if you look at problem C, the only thing recognized is $10,000 because you only have the recapture income or the 1250 unrecaptured income. There is no period of non-qualified use. The non-qualified use is if you rent it out first and then use it as a principal residence. It doesn't apply the other way around. What Congress didn't want people to do is to take their take a piece of rental property, live in it like a principal residence for 2 years, and try to capitalize on Code Section 121. But if you had your principal residence that you lived in for many, many years, and you said, gee, I can't sell it now, I'll rent it out, Congress didn't want to penalize those people. Any question, Frank?
Just on part B on that, just something for labeling in my own head. So we had 10K for a 1250 unrecaptured, and then the 150, a portion of it was 80K for the unqualified use. What would we label as 7K remaining?
I mean, again, I would label both capital gains.
Just capital, okay.
All right, chapter 19, guys. We're not obviously going to have time to make too much headway here, but I may have suggested towards the end of last class that if I didn't, let me just give you a framework how chapter 19 is organized. Keep in mind, chapter 19, you can think of as 4 quadrants. we're going to be looking at the cash and the accrual method. And we're going to deal with income, okay, and deductions. This chapter, the first half deals with cash method. The second half of the chapter deals with the accrual method. Generally, taxpayers, when it comes to income, what is the philosophy of taxpayers when it comes to income? Do they want it sooner or later, generally? From a tax perspective. Later.
Yeah.
Right? They want it later because the more you can defer income, the more you can defer payment of taxes, right? When it comes to deductions, and obviously with the IRS, what would it generally prefer taxpayers have to recognize income? Sooner, right? They have conflicting goals. So when it comes to deductions, do taxpayers want them later or do they want them sooner? Sooner, right? Because $100 deductible today is worth far more than $100 deductible 10 years from now, right? So taxpayers would prefer getting the deduction ASAP, and the IRS philosophy is generally, hold on. That deduction you can't take until next year or 10 years from now, right? So you have antithetical goals. Everyone agree? Not always, but often. So bear that in mind as we're going through the problems. And unlike what we did from chapter 2, it's no longer an issue of, is this income? Is it deductible? From chapter 14, right? What's the character? All those issues are non-issues for our purposes here. The only issue is one of timing, but timing is critical. Because timing may control, hey, time value of money issues, or maybe the tax rates have changed, right? And maybe sometimes you want to accelerate income because tax rates are going up next year. So there's all different philosophies, and this becomes a crucial issue for many taxpayers. So you can add to your repertoire of code sections. Just open up to code section 451. Code section 451 deals with inclusion issues. When monies must be included. And by way of contrast, code section 461 deals with when something is deductible. When something is deductible. Now, you guys have dealt with this long enough. Those are, code section 451, 461 are the general rules. And peppered throughout chapter 19 are not only the general rules, but here's a surprise, a lot of exceptions, all right, which we're going to learn about. So we're going to see those rules. Which one is more accurate, the cash method or the accrual method? Accrual is more accurate, right? But because Congress doesn't have faith to some extent, and rightfully so in the American public, it sometimes requires or permits the cash method, even though the accrual method is more accurate in terms of calibrating income. But again, more complicated. Not all taxpayers can use the cash method. If you check out code section 448, code section 448, there are significant limitations on who can use the cash method. Significant limitations on who can use the So what we're gonna see as we're going through this, now the cash and the accrual method aren't the only methods, just bear that in mind. The author's raised, and I'll just call it to your attention, we're not gonna cover this, but for example, there is something called the installment method. The installment method is found in Code Section 453. We've looked a little bit at the installment method, where you take profits in on an annual basis. But notwithstanding that, let's just take a look at one case and then we'll call it a night. Look at page 592, the Collar case. It's an interesting case. If you guys recall the facts, has anyone, let me just see, Michael, if anyone else read the case? Who says, gee, they were anxious to talk about it. They couldn't wait for class to begin because they couldn't. Anyone else? Dan, you were gonna say?
Yeah, but, I don't know if I remember all of it, but,
And Michael, chime in if Dan leaves out what you think is a salient fact here.
I know that, petitioner received a commission check for some, I guess, some land he speculated for somebody else.
Okay, so the person gets a commission check. When does the person get the commission check?
During that year.
Last day.
The last day of the year. All right, New Year's Eve. No, is that, yeah, New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah.
December 31st, right? After all the banks are closed, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm probably about the other case. Yes.
And the question is, does he have to report it this year or next year, right? Everyone agree?
Correct, yeah.
And you might say, who cares? Well, maybe the tax rates went up, or this case predates estimated tax payments. There's a whole host of reasons why this taxpayer might care, right? And Dan, who wins or loses here?
I think the taxpayer loses.
Michael, you're gonna say?
I agree.
The taxpayer loses. Why? Because he had, and we're gonna see our first exception, a CE, a cash equivalent. Even though he wasn't handed cash, right? He was given a check. And this check constituted a cash equivalent. So therefore, it was going to be taxable in the year he received the check, all right? All right, so here's what you need to do, guys. Chapter 19 lends itself to multiple choice questions, you know, as a professor. What year is something includable? What year is it deductible? Makes it very easy for me. And what you have to do, what's critical here, is label. Is it a cash method, accrual method, is it income, is it deduction? Because if you have to place yourself in the right quadrant, if you don't place yourself in the right quadrant, recipe for disaster. So finish chapter 19, have a great Thanksgiving. I will see everyone a week from now. Remember, 2 weeks from now is your exam.
So is 19 the last?
This is the last leg of the journey.